corporations have done an amazing job over the last 100, 125 years of using like beach and surf culture, starting with Hawaiian tourism and whatever else, to sell you everything under the sun.
Yeah.
All the things that you don't need, like cars, computers, drinks, software. like there is literally nothing that hasn't been sold using beach culture to the total global population. So what if we tried to turn that on its head? What if we used and understood how to use that power instead of talking to a small group who's already engaged in it? What if we use the power of surfing and surf culture to sell the world what it really needs, which is sustainable lifestyle? Right?
You're listening to the Spaceship Earth with me, Dan Burgess. Welcome to episode 9. I actually thought it was episode 10, and I just did the recording and I was episode 10, and I realised it's actually not episode 10. But it's the 10th month, so the aim is to get number 10 out later on this month. But anyway, welcome to the Spaceship Earth. It's been a few weeks since the last instalment. Really excited to share this episode, which is a conversation I had last month in San Francisco with a epic human being called Michael Stewart from Sustainable Surf. I was lucky enough to get out to San Francisco for a few days, and I was working with the Wild Labs project. We were delivering a project out there called Ocean Hack, in partnership with Salesforce and Project Everyone and the Global Goals. And it was a 2-day kind of pop-up innovation crazy lab thing with about 50 folks, which was part of the Global Climate Action Summit, and we brought a bunch of people together to explore a number of different kind of ocean themed challenges and looking at kind of creative responses through technology and creativity and partnerships and collaborations and all sorts. And it was a mad few days. If you're interested, I'll post the a little film of that Ocean Hack out there in the show notes, so you can have a little look what that was all about and where that project is heading. But as part of that, I got to meet Sustainable Surf, who are a not-for-profit based in California, and Michael and Brett, who are based there, and then there's Kevin, who's up in LA. I didn't get a chance to meet, and this is a conversation with Michael, which I had subsequently in his car 2 days later on the way for a brilliant little surf that he kindly took us on, little surf trip. So more on that in a second. But so who is Sustainable Surf? Well, you can check out all the links, and you're obviously going to hear the story from Michael. But effectively, there are like a kind of catalyst, a unit, I guess, for kind of sustainable living. Building a kind of movement of sustainable living, I guess, within the kind of surf culture and surf industry. So they're kind of they've been kind of working within that whole space and that whole system, really exploring how a whole kind of culture like surfing and water sports, the reach and influence that whole scene has beyond just those that are converted and surfers and water freaks, etc. But actually the influence that whole movement and culture has more broadly and more widely into culture, and therefore exploring how they can accelerate kind of sustainable practices, sustainable living, sustainable production, sustainable consumption within that space, within that sector, and consequently accelerate much bigger shifts into culture. So really fascinating model, and they do that through a bunch of different things, again, which Michael goes into chatting about. But broadly speaking, I mean, they look at a number of things. They're looking at it through products. So they've developed this, the first kind of certificate, sort of sustainable certification process, can't even say it, certification process for the production of surfboards. So they looked at the entire kind of footprint and production process of the surfboard industry, and then created like best practice for kind of lowest impact, lowest toxicity, better use of materials, all that kind of stuff. And they created the eco-board system, which is being adopted by a number of different surf manufacturers, including Firewire boards, who you can, again, I'll link to, but you can see what they've been doing with that mark. So they're looking at product. They have a whole thing that looks at kind of events. So they're kind of end to end looking at kind of the big kind of surf events and water sports events, and thinking, how do you create the lowest impact events, but how do you also create these experiences within these events that allow more people to kind of upskill their own habits and become more sustainable, learn more about everything from kind of transportation to food to materials. So again, really, really interesting model. And then they had this whole piece on kind of lifestyle. How do they actually help people shift their ways of living in a really cool way, so that they're starting to practice this stuff at home, and they call that the Deep Blue Life. And again, link out to some of that work they're doing. But really, really interesting. And I think what Mike, I was sort of drawn immediately to Mark, because he's just one of the sort of incredible characters, like brilliant energy, big heart, really funny, really creative, and they're working, with loads of constraints, which people like that I'm always drawn to, just sort of making extraordinary things happen with, pretty constrained context, but doing great stuff. So really drawn to the work of these guys, and then brilliantly they offered to take me surfing a couple of days after the hack, and so we headed up the coast, about an hour up north of San Francisco, to this beautiful little spot called Bolinas, and did this wonderful, had a bloody great longboarding session. It was just magic after the chaos and carnage of the few days before. And I took that opportunity in the car with Michael just to have this conversation and record it. So, apologies now, there was no sort of top end microphones. I literally whipped the old iPhone out and stuck it under Michael's chin as he was driving. So, it's quite an authentic sound recording. You're going to hear the sort of hum of the car and traffic and other bits and pieces. But, that was the conversation. It was very spontaneous. It wasn't really planned. But hopefully you'll enjoy it. And we talked across a load of different things. And I think, some of the really interesting things for me was, these kind of new stories of environmentalism. So how this environmental movement is spreading and morphing and being remixed in new ways and new stories, making it more accessible, more engaging to new people. And I think that's really interesting. And particularly this kind of power of kind of, different business sectors and cultural sectors to actually start to play a really interesting role in shifting the story of sustainability and environmentalism. What that really means is something much more kind of, just beautiful and makes sense today. And so we talked a lot about that, and how more people are looking to participate, and how we can find new ways for people to actually get involved in, get immersed in these things, but in creative ways and respond in creative ways. And we talked a lot about businesses, particularly businesses that are sort of, that give a shit about the world and are starting to kind of really build this into the sort of DNA of what they do. And we talked a lot about design and the kind of, the emerging sort of buzz of regenerative design, regenerative business and circular design, and just thinking more about these things in a more circular way, thinking much more about, how we're making things and, our relationship to materials and all that cool stuff. It's actually, it's super interesting when you find ways into it, and you sort of find ways for other folks to get into this, or you meet people where they're at and help them find their way into this story. So a lot of talking around how do we engage, how these ideas of living more sustainably, more considered, but actually how we can now start to package them into things that are actually super interesting for people and really feel like there's something going on right now. So the conversation went to many different places, and it was super cool, and really encourage you to check out Sustainable Surf. So let's get on with the conversation. This is Michael Stewart from Sustainable Surf, the SpaceShip Earth.
But on that, just tell me tell me a bit about the whole. Where did the Sustainable Surf story start? How did it all come about?
All right. We're driving on a beautiful
we should give some context
mountain road in Marin County. We're actually off of the 101. We're on the 1 right now, which is, for people who don't know, especially up here in Northern California, it's like this it's just a 2-lane winding road that is up on the mountains, and you're literally driving about 1,000 feet above the sea. As soon as we come around this corner,
we get the view.
You're going to see the views.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Get excited.
Yeah, and like, well, shoots. Maybe that's it right there. The beginning of sustainable surf is, for me, coming from that space of sort of amazement and awe and sort of gratitude. Every time I see the sea, whether it's in Ireland or in Northern California or in LA or whatever else, my heart opens up and I feel good. Like, I want to be there. It makes sense. There's something bigger than I am that's full of mystery and wonder, and is, changes by the, sort of moment, right? What an amazing spot. Okay, ready? So we're...
It's about to happen.
It's about to happen.
It's about... yeah.
The bushes are a little higher this second. But we're driving past like the stand of the eucalyptus trees.
I might need to put your window up just a little bit, just because I want to make sure the sound is...
Okay, are you ready?
We might need to sweat a bit.
Ready? We're coming around the turn. We're coming around the turn.
There we go.
Oh! Look at that, huh?
Oh, yes.
Just look, like point after headland. All the boats are out in the little bay there. They're all salmon fishing for king salmon, because that's a season right now. And you see this whole thing, who would not want to spend their time around here? And it's not just surfing. I mean, it's hiking, it's biking, you're like on the mountain, the big trees right down to the water, rocky coastlines, and that sort of awe and kind of amazement, which is not something that is specific to just small coastal, communities. Humans, as a species, when we're confronted with this, we're essentially in awe of it. So that is an amazing thing to use as a starting point for a conversation. It's like, look at this. This is amazing. This, this is going to make your life better. Even if you don't live by it, even if you only get a chance to come visit, or even see it in pictures and videos and photos, like, this is not the eighth wonder of the world. This is the wonder of the world. You know what I mean? We all came from this. We all carry the ocean inside of our own bodies, right? So it's that kind of connection for...
Have you always had that? Have you always grown up close to the ocean?
Luckily, I have, yeah. And, I tried to live away from the ocean up in the mountains for 1 year. In my 20s, didn't work. I couldn't... in some ways, it was actually hard to know where I was in space, because when you live by a coast and by a coastline, there's like this hard defining point of like land and sea. You can always orient yourself to it. It's like a North Star, right? So moving on from like, the ocean, how kind of amazing that it is. I also grew up playing in the ocean, just like every little kid. Sandcastles and boogie boarding and whatever else, which led to sailing and surfing on longboards and shortboards and whatever else, and just finding the ocean as this sort of amazing kind of a playground, right? And then sort of fast forwarding to being a sort of young adult in my 20s, I started to see that the effects of all of us living an unsustainable life, it was hard to see in a lot of ways from the other conservation groups what they were sort of yelling about, like, it's all going to be bad, there's all these impacts happening. You could actually see most of that first in the ocean.
Yeah, right.
Specifically around marine plastic pollution. If anyone thinks this is a new problem in the last 5 years, I got news for you. Surfers and people who've been in the ocean, we've been seeing this for the last at least 20, 25 years, right? Is it reaching a moment of epidemic crisis? Yes. And I guess that's a good thing in some ways, because humans as a species, we only tend to start changing our behavior when we get to a crisis moment, right? So besides the marine plastic pollution issue, you could look at what was happening, especially around climate change. So sea level rise, ocean acidification, ocean warming, the changing of ocean patterns and weather currents and things like that. All of that wasn't it wasn't something hard to try to wrap your hands around, like the parts per million of CO2e in the atmosphere. Like, the Earth is going to fall because we've gone past a 350 cancer, 350 parts per million, or over a 400. Like, that is really hard for most people to wrap their heads around.
Yeah.
But if you can see that, oh, look, my favorite beach is now trashed from, all this plastic here. The Great Barrier Reef has such warm water and such terrible bleaching effects, and has become more acidic, so it's harder for the corals to recover in the first place. And we're on our way to, basically having the best science on it essentially says that we're probably going to lose about 90% of coral reefs by 2030, and they may become functionally extinct by 2050 if we stay on the same path, if these same trends hold. And this was basically knowledge that was put out there, at least 10 years ago, which is essentially when we started Sustainable Surf.
Right.
And I've been working on climate change and doing reforestation projects and doing green product certification for for-profits and non-profits and whatever else. And I swear, 10 years ago, it really felt like, okay, the problem is there. You can see it. But man, you're having so much trouble connecting with people about why it's important, and maybe more importantly, why it's important in their own lives.
Yeah, right.
So all I did was look at my own life and say, okay, I love the ocean. The impacts, you can really see this stuff, especially if you kind of travel anywhere. And I'm passionate about surfing and playing in the ocean on, foil boards or windsurfers or, stand-up paddle boards or whatever kind of gets you out there.
Yeah.
And I sort of looked at it and said, well, surfing can sell anything to anyone. Maybe it could actually be used to sell a sustainable lifestyle to people, right? That was sort of the moment of, oh, well, what an opportunity here, right? And in the surf industry culture, at that point, there was almost no recognition, and sustainability as a core value was essentially nowhere to be seen. Patagonia might have been sort of holding up a flag, but they're more in the outdoor industry as opposed to the kind of core surfing. And there were some little things being done kind of here and there, but it was mostly like, hey, let's give some money to Surfrider or Surfers Against Sewage in the UK, right? And then we've done our part, we'll wipe our hands about it, as opposed to looking at how are we operating, what are our products made out of? How do we run our events? What are we doing with our waste? Let's look essentially at ourselves, right? And we thought there was an opportunity for us not to point fingers at the surf industry because they're just like us, right? And to say, hey, guys, we can actually do the right thing and start to move surfing and ocean sports as a culture down the right path. But you, the surf industry, surf media, you're the ones who actually have the headspace, right? So that's always been what's missing, is that the environmental nonprofits are sitting there trying to do their best to make this work and to do it, but we have no audience. It's the industry, through the athletes, through the ads they buy, through the media, through the events. They're the ones that actually have a platform to talk, not just to surfers, but to to the global community of people that are saying, oh, look, this looks really interesting. I'm going to pay attention to this. So there's an opportunity to not just talk to ourselves, and ourselves is actually, according to the WSL, an engaged group of about 120 million people around the globe that are tuning in to watch surfing and to be a part of it and whatever else.
Yeah.
That's not a small number.
That's a big audience.
But, that's a big audience that we can speak to, and that audience has the ability
to go out and
to
catalyze their own changes
to turn millions into billions once that in branding parlance, once that target market has actually been engaged.
Yeah.
And frankly, we think that's how we need to start thinking about this. There's a way to sell ideas to people. It's done all the time. Hollywood does it. Madison Avenue does it, right? Like let's collectively partner with the people who know how to do this. Get them signed on for how this is actually a better story, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about stories. It's like
exactly.
It's like the old story kind of sucks, right?
Yeah, right.
You're like, buy all this stuff. You're not really that happy.
Yeah. I'm depressed.
It's a disposable.
I'm
get
fat.
rid of it and buy some other stuff. It's like, whoa, man, that design problem is why we have the symptoms that we actually have now, from elevated CO2 to plastic pollution
to mental health epidemics.
Mental health, you name it, right? So, that was definitely not the elevator pitch version, but we're driving along and I'm going surfing. I'm excited.
And there's a lot to look. There's a lot to look at here.
Yeah, exactly, right. Okay, hey, do you want the soundbite?
Yeah, come on. Give
version
us a
of that. Okay, great. Well, so Sustainable Surf was started as a sense. Basically, it's an ocean health focused innovation lab, which is using surf culture, ocean culture, to end up selling a sustainable lifestyle to everyone on the planet. It's really that simple. And the way we do it is in collaboration and in partnership with all the other groups out there, right? We work as a catalyst. So we're not the change that we're seeking to actually see, because we're a small nonprofit organization. If we can help catalyze that change by getting all these other people engaged in doing what they're doing, and to take, protecting the ocean and ocean health and whatever else as the new story that people really want to hear about and want to be engaged themselves with, man, we can turn this thing around. Yeah. That's the thing. Like, this isn't rocket science. It's regular science.
Yeah. So give for folks listening, give a couple of examples of some of the projects you guys are involved in and developing.
Yeah, sure. So pretty simple. So like I said, we're trying to move everyone towards a more sustainable life. It's a nice soundbite. What does that actually mean, though, right? Yeah. Well, so going back to the language of branding, we've actually come up and said, okay, well, this is what we mean by a sustainable life, and there's 6 categories. I won't go into it now.
Sure.
And we've essentially branded that as
we'll link everyone out to it. So.
As we want you to be living a deep blue life, and that means something very specific. And it's not a here's 100 things that you can do to save the earth and whatever. It's a framework of 6 categories of impacts that we all make in our daily lives every single day. Transportation, health and wellness, food. Like it's not crazy things that you have to try to remember. It's what you're already doing in your life,
right.
And we're just sort of putting a framework around it, saying if you make better choices in these areas, you are on your way to living a more ocean-friendly, stoked, engaged life. And if we can turn, right now we've already got, thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that are paying attention and doing this.
Yeah.
We turn that into millions, we can turn that into billions. That literally is as simple as this can be. Right? It's that if we start enough people on this, and if we can collectively create this type of movement towards living what we're calling a deep blue life, because that's how people remember things. That's how brands like Apple sell you things, right? So great, let's use that same thing. Okay, so that's a framework for it, right? And then on the programmatic level, we essentially have 3 different programs that we use to do this, which is what I call building on-ramps for people to actually become part of the solution, right? So it's one thing to say, you should live a more ocean-friendly life, and here's sort of a framework, but people are looking for, okay, but what can I specifically do? So, for us, coming from a surfing background and like a water sports, we said, what's the one thing that sort of like bonds every single, surfer, and by surfer we mean, surfer and SUP and kiteboard, windsurf, whatever else.
Yeah.
What binds them together? It's the fact that there's a board, right?
Yeah.
So we said, okay, well, what if we start with the board? What if we make an authentically and science-based surfboard that's got lower carbon footprint, zero or reduced toxicity, and is not only better for the planet and the ocean, but it's actually for the people that have to end up building them. Right?
Because it's quite toxic industry, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the modern surfboard, in general, is basically a toxic stew of petrochemicals. Right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to give this guy kind of a little beat because I really do not want to be behind him for the next 15 minutes.
Yeah, we're behind a very large lorry.
Exactly. Oh, what a fantastic word,
Yeah, exactly.
A lorry.
A lorry. Yes,
Exactly.
it's a truck, isn't it? Or is it a lorry?
Yeah, exactly.
For me, this is a lorry.
Yes, exactly. But this guy has just been blocking our view.
Yeah, that's it. It's gone now.
Thank goodness it's gone.
The ocean's back.
I know. Okay, great. And hey, so we just went through that sort of beautiful, like high, kind of up on the cliff drive. Now we're coming down to, this is going to be driving around the entire back estuary here, which is one of the most important estuaries for seals and wildlife and birds and
what's this called? This is where we are?
So we just passed the little beach town of Stinson, and we're on our way to Bolinas. They're basically the same stretch of beach, separated by the mouth of this estuary.
Okay.
And just as a little side note, you'll have to do some editing on this to bring it back to the programs, but it's worth telling you as we're actually driving, because remember, you're supposed to put that thing down at some point and just enjoy it.
I'm going to when we get in the water.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take it in with us.
Okay, all right. Thank God.
I'm going to stop the interview in the car park.
Okay, so check this out. This is a great metaphor for where we are, actually, both in time and in culture. So right now, we are in a rift valley of the San Andreas Fault. This, to the side on the right, this beautiful mountain here that we just came down part of, is called Mount Tamalpais. On this side is what's called the North American Plate, right? So plate tectonics, right? And that plate is actually moving that way, some, and north. This estuary is basically the rift zone that is these two plates spreading apart, and over there, where those hills are, where Bolinas is, that's actually the Pacific Plate. In about 10 million years, that whole thing right there, Bolinas and everything else, is going to be about 10 miles to the northwest. So what we're looking at is we're kind of in between worlds, right at sort of this point.
There's a lot of pelicans in between these worlds as well.
There's pelicans. Yeah. There's going to be a seal colony here. Right. There's so much life and biodiversity and opportunity. And obviously, when the tide comes in, twice a day, this whole thing is it's a living laboratory. Is what it is. Look, so here's basically the seal colony here, right? Absolutely amazing. Like these areas in between one thing and the other.
Yeah.
And I'll bring this back to the culture. That's where our culture is. Yeah. We are in between stories, right? And so whenever I drive through here, I'm just reminded of okay, in between stories and in between things is kind of where it's messy. It's sort of muddy.
Yeah, the edges, right?
And it's constantly changing. Like the one constant is basically change, right?
Yeah. Bit like surfing.
Exactly like surfing, which is one reason why I think ocean conservation groups and surfing groups are uniquely adapted to the challenge that's actually in front of us, right? Because we are used to tide's going up, tide's going down, wind's going to come out, things going to come out of the mouth of the estuary. The food sources are moving in. All the stuff is there. There's sharks swimming on the outside of it. There's there's whales out there. There's you're in life.
Yeah, you're right in the middle of it.
What an amazing dynamic place to actually be. And if you do in this laboratory here, and I feel that all the ocean environmental groups are little laboratories of how can we make this place and this space better, and how do we use this time that we have before these things separate to get to the right story, right? Because if we don't, as we can see, there's going to be, if trends stay where they are now, there's going to be more fish in the ocean by weight. There's going to be more plastic in the ocean by weight than fish by about 2030, right? Yeah. Already told you about the reefs.
It always one of the things that's always struck me over the years in my work in this very similar place to where you're at. Sort of, I'm always on the edges of conservation, creativity, activism, corporate innovation, all this kind of stuff, and sort of weaving on these. I'm always on the edges of this thing. But one thing that fascinates me
is... We are fringe dwellers, my friend.
We are, exactly. On the fringes. Always more comfortable.
But we're on the bleeding... We're on the edge of what's next.
Yes.
And that's a really good place to be here right now, because where we're going next, I think, are key if we make the wrong decisions at this point, we're going to be locked in to a world that I don't think anyone wants to live in.
Right, exactly. And so the thing I was thinking, it was making me think of as you were talking was, never before have we had access to so much information that's telling us what is happening, right?
That's right.
So there's a politician back in the UK who I've admired for many years, Caroline Lucas, and she used to have this phrase, will we be the first species to monitor its own extinction? And it's and it's kind of like, you know what I mean, we're sort of, we can
predict it.
Aren't we doing
that right now?
We're seeing it. We've got all this data. It's telling us, for everything from this storm to this reef to this thing to this plastic, it's like we know what's coming, right? And that's an extraordinary place to be, right? Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So but yet it's still this sort of I don't know, sense of sort of, I don't know, disbelief or I don't know, or is it stuckness, or is it paralysis, or what is it that, if a doctor's telling you,
you're going to die if you keep doing this.
You keep smoking or you keep drinking, right?
Whatever.
I know.
Yeah. And, or even worse, which is, part of what you see, especially here in the United States, is, I know, but, what are you going to do? And it's like, well, to me, that's the opportunity. You're like, people are genuinely asking, okay, well, what are you going to do? Is there a better way for me to be and exist? And I think the answer is absolutely
yes. I mean, that's the exciting thing today, I think, because there are so many things you can start to point people at in terms of even a few years back, it was a little bit more sort of, well, imagine if you could do that, but actually you can now. We can live this kind of life, and it's all possible.
Exactly.
And I think what's interesting, what I find so interesting about things like Deep Blue, and some of this stuff is just it says it's like there is a self-awareness piece in this, because there's more. Something is about being able to notice more. If you're giving these kind of ways, or these frames, or these ways of principles, or ways of thinking about stuff, so how you eat, how you travel. But a lot of this is once you've learnt your way into it, then you start to obviously feel that this stuff makes me feel good, and so then
all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is actually a better
right
story, a better way to be.
Yeah.
And that actually, okay, so that's where it flips it from the old story on the conservation side, which is your life is
limits
gonna suck and it's gonna be worse.
Yeah.
But you need to do this, and you should do it for all of the right sort of moral reasons, and it's not going to be fun while you're having to do this. We don't believe that.
Yeah.
We think actually you can have like you want the kind of life that we're talking about, and oh, by the way, living it and making those kinds of choices actually bring you health, wealth, prosperity, and friends, and time, and family, and community. Like who does who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
That's what we're all sort of striving towards. And
this is the thing you're talking about with community. I find so interesting as well, because I think that's also the thing. Watching how watching this kind of shift that's going on around like participation culture, people sort of starting to get involved in conservation issues, but actually what's so fascinating, you see this through beach cleaning, and we run a thing in England called Good for Nothing, which is basically is bringing people around issues in a city and using the kind of skill sets to try and help activists. Really cool. Yeah, it's very cool. We do it for nothing, and it's good for nothing.
Invite us next time.
I will. No, it's brilliant. I mean, it's terrible at paying your bills because you just do everything for nothing. But it's great at building community, and but also what you get through this, and I think we're seeing this in things like beach cleaning and everything, is that people are going with this kind of like, oh God, the problem, I'm here to help.
Well, those are on-ramps, right?
Right.
They're looking to actually help. So,
but then what happens through the process is, oh, do you know what? A, I feel really good doing this. B, I've just met a bunch of people that I've actually had quite a good laugh with. And,
I've expanded my own sort of networking.
I didn't go shopping this morning, and it's been way better than shopping.
Exactly it.
So that's why I think so interesting at the moment. And again, like how this is why, as what you've been wrestling, creativity and different ways of telling these stories and helping people see their potential place in that story is so critical, because once you can help people sort of starting to experiment a bit into this space, then it just happens, right? Because like you say, we're feeling better, we're feeling more connected.
Then people take it on their own to do even more, right? And listen, if you don't build a place for people to come into, how in the world are we going to enable the shift that actually has to happen?
Yeah.
You have to invite people in, and it's got to be engaging, and it should be. Like, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
I think that conservation and environmental movement for a long time, and I can mostly only speak for the U.S. side of here, is that it's really been lacking that, right?
Yeah.
So let's make this fun.
Yeah, right.
It actually can be.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it is.
It is fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of funner than staying in the kind of the stuck story that we're still being battered over the head with, which is the only option. You have to do this. You have to work your guts out. You have to buy stuff. You have to be scared of the world because it's very scary out there.
Right.
Trust us, but we're looking after you. That story,
man,
you just got to get out and start.
Open your mind, open your heart, man.
Yeah. No, I'm.
All right, so we are rolling into the, it's like my favorite little beach town in Northern California, and it's called Bolinas, although I don't want...
It looks amazing.
Yeah, this
feels
is like,
amazing.
It's like old school.
Yeah.
And you got to go really slow through here, because if you don't, you'll get yelled at, which you should.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, more slowness, right?
Well, yeah, like people walk. Dogs hang out in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
You got the natural food co-op.
Yeah.
You got the community center. You got the chiropractor. You got the little general store. You got the organic, Coast Cafe. You got Smiley's, the bar that's been here for almost 100 years.
Amazing.
You sort of,
amazing.
And you don't rip through. You just.
Is this the future? I think we've just driven into the future.
We literally, thank you so much for recognizing that. We have literally driven into the future that people want.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And this town, like a lot of beach towns in California, that's where everyone wants to live. That's where they're coming to exactly for this, right?
Yeah.
And look, I'm going to show you. So this is again part of the lagoon, and this town is actually tied directly right to the ocean through this. This is one of my favorite, sort of places to be, and where we're probably going to end up surfing. Oh, hey, Zach. What's up, Zach? Nice. How are you?
Good. I was just about to go look for you guys.
Sweet. Yeah. Hey.
Hey, Zach.
Dan,
How you doing?
Zach.
Good to meet you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Brett's right behind us in the V-Dub van. You got the extra log.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Looks okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's gonna get better as the tide actually
Exactly.
fills in. Yeah.
It looks like it'll do a lot of that.
Yeah. So let's
over
we're gonna
there?
mosey up. Yeah.
So tell me about we were getting into the
The program.
sustainable surf programs.
Yeah. All right. So let me tell you about the programs. Since I know, look at that Westphalia.
Yeah.
Shoot, check that one out. Oh, that was like, I've never seen a bright lemon. That was like a lemon meringue pie, Westphalia. All right, sorry.
That's all right. You get a few odd ones in Europe.
Exactly. All right, so I know that you have to go back and edit this.
Yeah, don't worry about that. Don't worry about the mumbling.
Yeah,
Fine.
so I think that where I left off was essentially explaining that the fundamental program and architecture that we're focused on at Sustainable Surf is the deep blue life, and that as a program and as an architecture, and then going from that, okay, now you lay this framework out. How do you provide cool, meaningful on-ramps to help people get started? And while we can't do everything, we have picked some, basically 3 areas of focus that we think that we can work with academia, business leaders, media, athlete ambassadors on, and it breaks down kind of like this. So if there's Deep Blue Life as the umbrella, there is Deep Blue boards, Deep Blue gear, and Deep Blue events. I'll just kind of break those down.
Yep.
So underneath the heading of Deep Blue boards, we have a certification program called...
Just to your window, just a little bit.
Oh yeah,
That's right.
there you
Just
go.
on the volume. Yeah.
Yeah, so under Deep Blue boards, we have a certification program called the Eco Board Project, right? It's basically a certification program that certifies more ocean-friendly raw materials to be using to build surfboards, kiteboards, stand-up paddleboards, windsurfers, all kinds of stuff. And those materials, depending on what category they typically have to have a lower carbon footprint, coming from recycled, upcycled, bio-based sort of inputs, reduced or lower toxicity on the chemical side of things. So for surfboards, we're looking at the resins, we're looking at fiberglass, glass, and the alternatives, and then the different types of foam or materials like wood that you can actually use for the blank or the core of the board. Those are the 3 big things that make up the environmental footprint that a surfboard actually has. And we actually know what we need to be looking at, not just because, those are some of the components. We actually did the world's first life cycle analysis on a surfboard. And we ended up working with top brands to actually do this. So we collaborated with Firewire, Channel Islands, and then a small manufacturing company in Los Angeles called Earth Technologies that only make eco boards. So it was sort of brands at 3 different levels, making boards in essentially 3 different places. And we went to their factories and hooked up the devices for their shaping machines and the pumps and hoses. We measured the blanks before they were shaped, and after they were shaped, we calculated all the waste. Basically looked at everything that we could.
Yeah.
And worked with a company that actually does LCA studies and work for the for Walmart and the largest corporations. But the founders happen to be surfers, and they said, "Yeah, great, we'll work with you on this." So,
what was the big sort of learnings, or the kind of?
Yeah, the learnings are basically this: is that you can build what is called a certified eco board that has both a qualified core material, so wood or recycled foam or like algae-based foam, and using non-toxic, zero VOC epoxy resin that's made from bio-based sources, and also using alternatives to fiberglass like flax cloth and basalts and things like that.
Yeah.
And you could get up to a 40% reduction in the carbon footprint, and basically drop the toxicity of the surfboard through all the chemicals almost down to zero. And so you can get a 40% reduction by literally just the shaper and the brand selecting from materials that are already available in the market, have been tested by the world's best.
Yeah.
These materials have won the top contests in the world, including, like the Pipeline Masters in Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
So, absolutely proven.
They work.
They work.
Yeah.
It isn't like, oh, these materials have a lower environmental footprint, but they don't work as well and they suck. They actually work at the highest level. So that's pretty much, think if you could go to, Apple or, some supermarket chain or whatever else and say, we can drop your environmental footprint across carbon footprint, waste, pollution, chemical toxicity and whatever else by 40%. And all you have to do is pick something different.
Yeah, right.
That was a huge, that's why everyone should be doing this.
Yeah.
And the materials are now available and are, they're out there. So that's great.
And how has the industry responded to this work?
It's been over, since 2012.
Yeah.
So it's been 6+ years, and it's actually been great. So take arguably the top two sort of gold sort of standard brands for just surfboards around the world, and that's Channel Islands and Firewire, which also owns or produces all the boards for Slater Designs, right?
Yeah.
Firewire and Slater Designs made a global shift, 4 or 5 years ago, to produce nothing but eco boards.
Right.
That's huge. Channel Islands has now integrated eco board technologies across all their models. So you can go onto the Channel Islands website and pick your favorite board, pick your model, and you can choose the materials right there and say, oh, cool, I want the recycled EPS core. I want the plant-based, bioresin. So it's as easy as ordering it what we would say the more, maybe not the best way.
The dirtier, popular way.
Exactly, right? So it's
amazing.
Yeah, and we've actually got let me see. So at this point, we basically add, 1 or 2 new builders almost a week. So right now, we've got over 200 EcoBoard project or we have over 200 partners that are involved in the Deep Blue Board program,
Right.
using the EcoBoard certification.
Wow.
That's absolutely amazing. Every single year, the number of boards being built has been going up and up. Last year, in 2017, 65,000 EcoBoards were built. Like,
Amazing.
That's not a drop in the bucket.
No,
and it's probably going to be up to 75, maybe 80,000 this year. And keep in mind, it's not just surfboards.
Yeah.
So about 3 years ago, we said, great, we've got pretty high adoption here in the surf side of things. Let's look at all the other board sports. So, like we did by going to the top brands in surfing, went to the top brand in stand-up paddleboarding, which is a company called Starboard.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically followed Firewire's example and made global changes at the places that they build boards. So every single Starboard SUP is now a certified EcoBoard, and we're doing that with kiteboards as well. So we have our latest ambassador is one of the most world famous kiteboarders. His name is Ruben Lenton from the Netherlands. We've actually worked with Ruben to build his own custom model boards with a company called Lue in the Netherlands. And so he's now riding all EcoBoards. We're working on the windsurf side of things through Starboard as well. We have companies doing wake skates. It's a it's sort of a whole.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Amazing.
it's there's just going to be more and more adoption, and this is actually really cool. Is that we've also started working with some partners in the soft top category, right? Because
that's growing, right? It's huge, isn't it?
More surfboards. There's more Wave Storms, that brand, sold every single year than there are all the hardboard brands put together. Absolutely, yeah. It's the biggest surfboard brand in the world, right? And there's lots of other soft top makers, besides just Wave Storm. But
there's you've probably come across them. There's this retail chain in Europe, and I think they've come to the US, Decathlon. You come across Decathlon?
No.
So they're basically it's like a sort of supermarket for outdoor sports. Right?
Oh, really?
They're all on the motorways in like Spain and France and Portugal. You pull into these, on these industrial parks. You pull in, and you go, oh, okay, surfing's over there, soccer's over there, rugby, climbing, fishing, and they've just got these extraordinary spaces of kit. Everything you need, right, to do it, from wetsuits to boards to this to that. But they make their own boards, and they do lots of soft top boards, huge amounts, and you've seen it grow every year.
Yep.
But someone like them, I guess, would be interesting because they've got this kind of absurd footprint of reach, to like not even the holiday surfer, I guess. Do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah. That's where the biggest impact from all these materials are actually coming from.
Yes.
Is now that surfing and water sports in general, like in the last 20 years, but certainly the last 10 and really in the last 5 have just grown
nuts.
exponentially, right? And there are some challenges with with having that, right? And I'm just gonna give this guy a little room.
We're just on the edge of quite a big dip.
Yes, we are.
Quite a big drop, actually.
Yes, we are on a thin mountain road and a gigantic RV just passed us. So with more people coming means more impact and bigger crowds and this, that, and the other. But the upside of that is that since we're focused on using surfing and surf culture to actually talk about ocean health and to get people's attention, there's more people that we can actually talk to and have a meaningful conversation with around ocean health through this, sort of newfound love of surfing and ocean sports, and right. I mean, like that's like let's not lose essentially the opportunity.
Yeah.
To talk to those people and say, okay, you're interested in surfing or kiteboarding or something, whatever else, great. Let's talk about the impacts that are actually happening and how you can help and become part of the solution, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that's kind of,
that's the board.
We've kind of beat the deep blue board to sort of death there, right?
We got that.
Very long-winded.
No, that's
Check.
good. That's good.
Yeah, I can chop that one up. So then next is deep blue gear, right?
Yeah.
And what this is for us is we're focused on upcycling partnerships that we can come up with, that we can essentially catalyze, and take a material like the waste styrofoam packaging that you helped us move
this
today,
morning,
right?
Like a whole load of it.
And the used wetsuits.
Yeah.
And work with a partner to actually make better products with this material that, again, have reduced carbon footprint, toxicity, using...
Otherwise destined for landfill.
For landfill, exactly.
Yeah.
So we turn styrofoam packaging into new EPS surfboard blanks with Marco foam. We do wetsuits into the world's best yoga mats with a company called Suga.
Which I've got one in my hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It looks brilliant, right?
Yeah, it's bloody wonderful.
I just had to use that word.
Yeah, I might use it on the plane tomorrow night.
And then you've actually seen my bag here, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
There's a Mafia bag that's right in your hand. That's all upcycled boat sails and kiteboard sails.
Yeah, love
This is
that.
actually loop that is from rock climbing up in Yosemite.
Yeah.
And there's recycled wetsuit stuff in there as well, right?
Yeah.
So all of that was going to just go to the landfill, and now we worked with Mafia Bags to make these amazing backpacks, right?
Yeah.
Wine corks into surf traction pads. That's a project that we're also working on, and so on and so on, right? So it's taking this waste material and giving it new life.
Yeah. Doing what the non-human world just does as part of how things work, right? So
That's exactly right.
The natural world's always looking for waste and thinking, well, that's energy or food or it's it's a material for something else.
Something
right?
always gets turned in to something else, right? Yeah. The outputs of something are the inputs to something else, right? So so we're trying to, using
circular design.
A circular design. We're trying to emulate the way that nature and the natural world automatically works.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, great. So that's that. And then Deep Blue Events is actually pretty easy. We're trying to make ocean-focused surfing and culture and art and sort of music to be run in a more ocean-friendly way. So it's kind of fun. It's essentially following the same tenets of the Deep Blue Life strategy for an individual.
Yeah.
But basically scaled up for
1,000 or 10,000
events.
or however many you've got. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, and we started off with working with the World Tour of Surfing. And we've now, moved into, big events like Wanderlust, right? Or the Byron Bay Surf Festival. We're doing, we did the Log Jam event in South Africa, which are like art, culture, longboarding.
And so how does that? How does that work? So do you sort of consult into the organisers and look at what they're? How does it? Give me a sense of how it works. And
So
what role you play in it?
Yep. Well, there's 5 categories. Yeah. It's really similar to the 6 categories that are in Deep Blue Life, and it's focused on where the biggest impacts are. So energy use, transportation.
Yeah. Food, I guess.
So there's the waste management part of it.
Yeah.
And the sourcing of all the right things so that you don't end up with much of anything.
Yes.
On the waste side, period. Right.
Yes.
So if you're looking at waste diversion, it's not just like, okay, well, how do we collect this?
Deal all the crap at the end. It's like, well, what comes into the site? What comes onto the site?
What do we allow on there?
Yeah.
Because we know it has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to have everything either be recyclables and to have a pathway for it, not just like, oh, it could be recycled somewhere. It's like, cool. Well, either it's going to be aluminum or glass, right?
Yeah.
Or it's going to be, able to be composted. So it's inorganic, and there should be very little waste, period. Because if you just think about it and source it correctly, then like our events run so much better and so much easier, and the event organizers are like, wow, okay, this, we didn't have to spend as much staff time to make this stuff happen because, it automatically goes in this place.
Yeah.
And it's set up that way, right? So,
And where do you sit on things like? So you get into kind of food and catering and
catering, sourcing.
Where do you sit with things like meat and stuff and?
Yeah, well, just like the event that you guys ran, we absolutely strive for, like, okay, if there's going to be food there, let's think about this, and let's focus on having a plant-based diet, period, right? Because meat is an incredibly intensive resource to, build, grow, and sort of what comes out of it as well.
Yeah, right. All the kind of unintended byproducts that. Yeah,
right. So, if you source a plant-based diet in the first place, then you avoid all of that. Like it's like, man, some of the stuff just comes down to like, let's make things easier and more fun and better, so we can focus time on the things that we really care about. Do you really want to have tons of staff focused on like garbage cans and trash and having to pick through things and figure out like, well, where does this thing go? It's like, how about we just avoid it? And it's like, okay, everything goes here. And that's going to be, composted like at the Vulcan Pipe Pro, and the for that matter the entire Triple Crown series over in Hawaii, which includes the Billabong Master, the Haleiwa Pro, the Sunset Beach, all the food that gets sourced for those for the athletes and staff and whatever else. We've actually set it up that any food waste through the catering actually goes to a farm that is literally across the street from Pipeline, called Waihuana Farm, and we do all the composting right there on site. Anything that needs like sort of shredding, like compostable cups and things like that, we have a chipper there. All the rest of it just goes through, and we make big sort of mulch piles, and that farm in itself is an organic CSA farm, which is community supported agriculture, right? And it's actually growing food for the local North Shore community. So what used to be this like this nasty stuff, and it's in the dump, and you're trying to keep the beach clean, but it's super hard because all of a sudden
it's an input into that community.
Now it's an input, and it's helping them do one of the biggest things that Hawaii needs is homegrown food and production, and farmers and people to want to support community supported agriculture, right? Because Hawaii imports 95, 98% of the food that the island has. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy,
You know how much? Okay, so right now the population in Hawaii is very, very similar in size to when good old Captain Cook sailed around from England and quote unquote discovered the Hawaiian Islands, right? It was the same population.
Right.
Guess how much of their food was imported?
Yeah, probably none.
Zero. Right. So they fed a population of the exact same size back then.
Yeah.
That should just blow your mind. Be like, oh, right.
Well, it does, but even like, I mean, I have this thing like London. London has like think it has something like 3 days worth of food supply.
Yeah, well,
Do you know what I mean?
Hawaii has 14, yes, but Hawaii is an island that is so far out there, and shipping.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and so these global catastrophes or wars or whatever else, like if that
we can't feed ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, right. You guys are also an island, right?
Yeah.
You know, so it shares like it. Shares some of the same things. Like it's, there's no more key core community issue than food security.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
it's a bit of a level of food. It doesn't really matter how much cash you've got if you got nothing on your plate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no farmer who is like, okay, I am going to be doing this and planting this here and tending the earth, and they actually have access to land and water, and it's clean, and you're doing stuff. It's like, man, that's something that's sort of hidden. Our system right now tries to hide most of that from view, right?
Yeah.
But when it really comes down to it, if you lose that link, the world needs farmers, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a farming revolution, right? It's such an interesting space because there's on the positive, on the possibility, I see so much energy going in on a grassroots level back into food, community-based agriculture.
Yeah.
A younger generation really getting interested in it.
So and here's how we actually use that. And I know that you guys do too as well. So in our programming, when we're talking about protecting the ocean and the earth and solving climate change and that kind of stuff, we actually don't talk about that much. We talk about the things that people actually do in their life. So we talk about where food comes from and the importance of organic farming, and even just like local, whether it's organic or not. And it's like knowing sort of your food shed and striving for more of a plant-based diet and yada yada. Like being able to talk to people about things that matter in their own lives and that they have access to, and even more importantly, you make decisions about food 3, 4, I don't know. I'm hungry. Yeah. I got a 6-year-old. We make decisions about food 7 times a day, right? So every single day, it's like, hey, let's carve off one. Let's make one better decision about the things that you buy for food and drink, and where they're coming from. Maybe they have less packaging. Maybe they're local. Maybe they're fair trade, organic, whatever else. It's like, once you start that conversation, man, it just goes from there. And it's something that people can actually grasp and they can hang on to and hold on to, and it becomes actionable. That is how you end up solving climate change, right?
No, I agree.
And that is how you end up solving sea level rise and the marine plastic pollution, all this kind of stuff. It's like, oh, right, we can do this.
We do have some potential to change things, even though we're told we can't. We do actually. It is down to us.
Exactly, and part of it is like, hey, let's wake up and reimagine. What the world is that we want to actually live in. Right. All right.
So we've just pulled up, and we're going to switch cars now. So just tell quickly, where can people find your work?
So obviously they can go to our website, which is sustainablesurf.org. And one of the best places is just come find us on social media, which is at @SustainSurf on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us on Facebook, because that's where we're like on a daily basis talking about the stories and the things that are interesting, that are out there, that are actually happening. Come to our website. You can find about the programs and where you can buy your next eco surfboard and all that kind of stuff. And we're surf the web, man.
Oh, we will. Well, Michael, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for taking me surfing, dude. That was such a treat. And, it's been great to hang out the last couple of days.
What's also great about this is that, I'm like, cool, I took Dan surfing, and Lindsay, this is great, I'm a hero. Guess what? I got to go surfing too.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's been amazing.
We're all winners.
Thanks, dude.
Hey, man.
So that was Michael Stewart from Sustainable Surf. I hope you enjoyed that. I had such a great time hanging out with those guys from Sustainable Surf and that particular little road trip, and just an unbelievable little surf session in such a beautiful spot. It was a gift actually after the sort of the few weeks of craziness of that project and getting out there and then being out in San Francisco. But it was, a really amazing time. And I think, I'm just looking at the moment, like the last week, the whole IPCC climate report was out, and I think you probably struggle if you haven't seen or heard of that one. You've been somewhere very remote, 'cause I think it actually got quite a lot of airplay, as you'd hope it would, right? It sort of basically says, civilization collapse in 12 years if nothing really changes. You kind of hope it was on the headlines. You kind of hope it's, sort of on the headlines for longer than a couple of days. It's quite interesting watching that, it's sort of in the headlines and across the media. And, of course, it's gone again and it's all on to sort of other stuff. And anyway, I won't get started on the whole climate thing, but when you meet people like Michael and his crew and you see the work they're trying to do within that particular sector of the surf industry, but also just the knowledge of the influence that sector has on people of all sorts, well beyond actual surfers and water sports enthusiasts themselves, but that culture can reach a lot of people, and so trying to be a catalyst within that space to make these kind of shifts to help us live more sustainably, more low impact, more regeneratively, actually more beautifully. I think that's what a lot of this is about, right? This is a more beautiful way of living, of running businesses, of being in the world. And I think you see that IPCC stuff and you just think, we don't have vast amounts of time to kind of make these shifts. And it's all kind of out there now. The people are out there, the innovation's out there, everything is possible. What it just needs is real will and commitment. Obviously, there's the political will, which everyone keeps banging on about, but we can't wait for politicians. So, we need more business leaders, more creatives, more people that have the ability to get a story or to take an action into the world to help us all on this journey. We need more folks stepping up, more courage in all these sectors, because the transition, the journey can be so epic, and it is already happening, of course. But I don't know. I feel, that would be great, wouldn't it? To see, let's see these kind of sustainable surf ideas popping up in every sector. And that creativity and possibility and community and just that way of working, which is just so much more open and heartfelt and honest. And it's such a lovely way. It's a great thing to see and experience. So I shall stop there. Before I sort of, combust in all sorts of hope for the future, which is what we want. Combustible hope. Does that make sense? Nothing makes sense today, to be honest. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. More to come on the SpaceShip Earth. I might even actually get a webpage up for the SpaceShip Earth itself. If that sounds like a good idea, send me a signal from the internet. Could be anything. Could be a like or a message or a something, some kind of indication that you think that might be a thing that's worth doing. It all helps, those little bits of feedback. These feedback signals they're all good. Good for me anyway. Help make me feel like, I'm going to do that. Someone out there wants that. I'm going to do that. So remember, if you want to get in touch, you can do so. If you've got any questions, thoughts, ideas, just hit me up. It's dan@danburgess.earth, or you can get me on Twitter @dansolo, Instagram @dansolos. If you like what you're listening to on the iTunes, give it a rating. It's all good because it means other people will find it, and that'd be nice. If this is doing it for you, just please don't be shy. Please reach out, drop me a message, send me an emoji of some sort, whatever. It's all good. It's really lovely to connect. I think that's it. So until next time. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, there are no passengers on SpaceShip Earth. We're all crew. Peace and out. Take it easy.